Welcome everybody and good evening. My name is Phil Edwards. Just want to make sure that I haven't committed the sin of not muting. Good evening, my name is Phil Edwards and I am your webinar moderator tonight. Welcome to the Bellarine Ward, welcome to the Community Candidates webinar, hosted and funded by the combined Bellarine Community Associations as a collective, to provide an opportunity for voters to listen to the candidates in the Borough Council elections in a COVID safe gathering. Can I say welcome to David Kenwood from the Point Lonsdale Civic Association and David Connolly from the Queenscliff Community Association. I would like to begin tonight's webinar by acknowledging the Wadawurrung tradition as the traditional custodians of the land on which we live today, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples participating from anywhere tonight. Of the 11 candidates standing for the borough, all 11 have joined tonight for the webinar, and we welcome them all. The webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be posted on the various community association websites and Facebook pages in about 2 days. A couple of simple rules. Candidates are asked not to interject when another candidate is speaking. Candidates should mute their own microphones when not speaking to avoid background noises and potential Zoom embarrassing moments. In the first part of the webinar, a big picture question has already been submitted to the candidates. Each candidate will have 4 minutes to speak and will hear a 3-minute warning bell. If at the 4-minute mark, the candidate is still speaking, their microphone will be muted by me or the co-host. This ensures all candidates have equal time. In the second part of the webinar, further questions include those received via email beforehand, and there are 3 questions. Each candidate will be given 1 minute to answer a question, and then we'll move to the next candidate and we'll work our way through the 3 questions. You, the attendees, can type in questions for the candidates at any time during the webinar, starting now by using the Q&A function on your toolbar on the webinar. You can thumbs up a question if you like someone else's question. Keep your questions clear. Please keep them short and please make sure it's a question. In the third part of the webinar, I'll select from those questions and we will offer each candidate the opportunity to speak to the question, again with a 1-minute time limit. At the 1-minute point, I or the co-host will mute the candidate's microphone and move quickly to the next nominated candidate. Candidates can pass on a question if they do not want to say anything, and they're not obliged to consume their minute if they don't want to. At any time, offensive or inappropriate questions will be dismissed. All right, so let's begin. The big picture question that was put to all the candidates earlier was, what changes or improvements would you like to see in the Borough of Queenscliff? Our first candidate to speak tonight is Donnie Grigow. Thank you, Donnie. Just unmute, Donnie. There you go, you're good.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank the PLCA and QCA for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'd like to wish all the candidates the best of luck with the election. It's great for democracy that we all have so many candidates running, especially for the first time. I'm Johnny Grigow and I live and run the Shoulder Shed restaurant in Hesse Street, Queenscliff, for the past few years with my husband, Andrew. Through my work and volunteering at the Queenscliff Football and Netball Club and Cottage by the Sea, I've come to know many people and what they'd like to see happen in the borough. So what improvements would I like to see in our borough? There's 2 parts to my response. Firstly, how the borough should operate, and secondly, how it should look. In terms of the operation of the borough, I think one of the challenges the council has faced over the past few years has been a disconnect between the functioning of the council and the residents. According to the latest government data satisfaction with community consultation and engagement sits around the 50% mark. In a tiny local government area, this could have been easily avoided. Queenscliff's small size is not a problem, it's an opportunity. Councillors and council staff don't have all the answers. One of my key platform's objectives is to have a greater community involvement in council strategy, policy development and project implementation. The revised Local Government Act of 2020 encourages partnering between council and community, and I strongly support this methodology to define the formalised council approach to many activities such as climate change, heritage, management of caravan, camping and sporting facilities. It must be the backbone of our preparation for the next 4-year council plan. Of course, this must operate within the rate cap budget. I'm happy to say I'm financially conservative and frankly, leveraging off the skills of our local community is not only inclusive thing to do, it's really practical. It is not surprising that many other councils, for example, the Surf Coast, have plenty of these committees, and it mystifies me why this hasn't been done here. Our council has to learn to let go and trust the community. It lets councillors and stretch council officers get back to steering, not rowing. My second lot of improvements relates to how I'd like to see the borough after 4 years. It sounds corny, but I believe we've got to have some pride in where you live. Unfortunately, the past few years have seen council energy focused on huge projects that went nowhere. Over $1 million have been spent on consultancies with virtually nothing to show. Looking at the borough with fresh eyes makes you realise that in civic places, there's a mishmash of styles, signs, seats, curbing, footpaths, fencing. In some key access places to the beach, there's no rubbish bins, no taps, and pathways are overgrown or poorly maintained. Our green spaces need tending and expanding. Parks and gardens need future-proofing against climate change, and our fragile foreshores are in grave danger of being loved to death without proper controls. So we need to get back to basics and get our houses into order. Queenscliff and Point Lonsdale are exceptional places, but they're looking tired and need a fresh, thorough, well-functioning civic maintenance program which integrates with the council asset management plan. It can't be something we do once and forget. Of course, a great problem is the duplication. Excuse me. Of course, a great problem is to...
Donnie, that's your 4 minutes. Thank you. So our next speaker is Isabel Tolhurst. Isabel, unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Phil, and thanks to the PLCA and QCA for having us. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered, the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I am Isabel Tolhurst, and I am running as an independent candidate to be an advocate for this community and to bring a fresh perspective and independent thinking to community and council. If elected, I will work to implement changes and roll out improvements for the betterment of our community. The first improvement I would like to see is for council to become more representative. Currently, there is only one female councillor, despite women making up 60% of our council, or borough rather. The best governance comes from representative leadership, and I believe we need this urgently to emerge from COVID in a position to thrive. I would also like to see improved community consultation and transparency from council. This means bringing the community along from the inception of ideas, plans and proposals. It means providing opportunity for the community to have a genuine dialogue with councillors. If elected, I will propose taking questions without notice in monthly council meetings. A new council has the capacity to amend the governance rules which dictate this procedure, and I believe it needs urgent redress to ensure there is productive debate and exchange between council and community. I would like to be a part of a change where council is seen to be a true collaborator with community. I would also like to see improved collaboration with our arts, tourism and retail sector to support our local economy. This means reinstating and reimagining the community grant scheme, which was put on hold this year due to COVID. I believe not only should it have been kept on, but it actually should have been increased to ensure that our community organisations and arts projects survive COVID and beyond. We should also extend or consider extending fee discounts and waivers for traders and local businesses, ensuring that red tape is at a minimum and that they can spring back onto their feet with ease. I believe there is great opportunity for this sector if adequately supported, and if elected, I am committed to piloting new ways of doing things within COVID restrictions. If elected, I want to improve and strengthen our resilience against COVID by creating a community safety strategy that ensures we are prepared for summer, our peak tourist season, and it protects the community's health and wellbeing above all else. This strategy should consider the specific impact COVID has had on our borough and is an essential for managing a new normal, whatever that looks like. I also want to see changes in how we respond to climate change. I believe the borough could and should be a leader in this space. One improvement I would like to see is for the council to join the Australian Coastal Councils Association, which is the only body to represent coastal councils at a federal level. I want to see an updated coastal management plan written and implemented, and I want to see climate change action and environmental management considered in all that we do. In pursuit of celebrating and protecting our cultural heritage, an improvement I will contribute to if elected is the activation of our sites of cultural, historical, maritime and military significance. Through deliberative development of shared space strategies, we can seize opportunities to engage our community, attract visitors and enrich our future through the preservation of our past. Cultural heritage for me is also about recognition and collaboration with First Nations people. So as a first step, and I've seen this pop up as a question already, I would like to see the Reconciliation Action Plan reinvigorated. It is dated and it's not truly engaging our First Nations group. And I would like to see that as a first step of long-term engagement with traditional owners. My vision for the Borough of Queenscliff is one that is more representative, proud of its history, cares for its residents and ratepayers, and is excited about seizing opportunities. My vision is based on extensive canvassing and listening to this community. I want to see a council that listens, that acts, and if elected, I will do just that. Thank you.
Thanks, Isabel. Susan Salter is next. Thank you, Susan. Susan, just unmute your microphone.
So
okay,
can I say thank you to the PLCA and the QCA for organising this tonight. Well done to you all. Congratulations to all the other candidates. It's been a bit of a long road. So I would like to talk about a few things that I'm looking forward to changes in. And so the first one I'm looking forward to is the new Local Government Act 2020, which is very prescriptive about improving community input. So we've had a number of things that we've tried to improve community input over the past 4 years, for example, community listening posts. But this time round, all major decisions of council will have to have extensive community input in. The new council plan will require a huge community consultation prior to the new councillors constructing a council plan. This will be the first time we've ever done this. It'll just be fantastic. This will be a very new change and I look forward to participating in this if I'm elected. All the reference groups will have to engage in broad community consultation and the whole of community voice will have to be involved in community decision making. This includes things like the reference group for governance and finance will actually have to have voices beyond their membership who participate in that. The first of these community consultations, of course, is out in the community at the moment, which is for the climate change. And I helped design some of that consultation process. And I'm hoping everyone's going to participate, whether you're a councillor or a community member. The other thing that I am extraordinarily excited about is the new heritage scheme, which has recently been passed. And so it's going back and it's reviewing the document that's 1984 that has been preserving much of our built infrastructure. So all infrastructure that exists since 1835, and there's bits of it in all of that time, will now have a much more updated heritage scheme. One of the problems that councillors had is that we frequently say, no, you can't subdivide land, or you can't do that to your beautiful old building, or you can't do that to the environment. And then it goes to VCAT and we get overturned. So one of the things the new heritage scheme is going to do is say, instead of saying should, it's going to say must. And changing those words repeatedly throughout is actually going to give us far more grunt at VCAT to defend our community, how it looks, our history. It will make it better for our residents. It will make it better for our tourists visiting here. So I think the borough needs to stop with large projects. We need to finish all the projects we have before we move on. We need to proceed with small ideas, talking with the community voice, and we need to finish those individually before we move on again. We need to involve the community in projects such as clearing weeds around our lighthouses and our sand dunes. I know many community groups are itching to be involved in this. I personally would like, if I'm re-elected, to keep the borough debt-free. It has been a long road to get us to this very happy state, and I would like to keep that. We need to reinvigorate our festivals and our events to help out our business to get back on their feet and to bring energy back into our town. Not only just for the tourists, you know, our residents are just looking forward to being out and about together, you know, COVID.
Susan, thank you. Our next candidate to speak is Jeffrey Matthews. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to thank the PLCA and the QCA for putting on this discussion on Zoom. I have several things. My main aim has been community and infrastructure, and I feel that the council has previously been working well with the community groups, and the community groups have been very energetic in this town, and it's something that needs to be reinforced constantly. We have a number of sporting groups and community groups such as the literary festival and all those things that have been great for the town and improved it immensely. I also think the museums, the hubs and the parks have been looked after quite well by the previous councils. I find the parks now are starting to look quite splendid and are great for people. So my other part of what I would see is infrastructure, and I feel that the town has lost its way a bit on infrastructure. When I came here 20 years ago, I was on a committee that was looking at the regeneration of Hesse Street. Point Lonsdale's had a great regeneration, and I think it's very, very good. Hesse Street has had, since I've been here, several consultant reports, and I don't think really any of them have been acted on seriously. And I feel that Hesse Street has been a great loser, both for the retailers and the residents or ratepayers of Queenscliff and the visitors. Part of the infrastructure is making sure that the street can have some shade. It's a very hot street in summer, as most of you may know. And so I think there needs to be a great move towards repairing some of the infrastructure in Hesse Street. Also, I think toilets are a bit of an issue. I know I go back to infrastructure. We have some good toilets. We had some bad toilets. We have Shortland Bluff with no toilets. I believe the Dog Beach has no toilet. And that's where many people go each day to walk their dogs. My other aim with the infrastructure is to join the harbour to the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse, and using history, the historical and heritage issues, maritime processes, and also involve the cultural of the Wadawurrung people more in a really quite a tight little package between Queenscliff Harbour and the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse, and sort of try and push the town to become the start of the Great Ocean Roads. So we get a bit more things moving in the town, and the town needs to be vibrant to bring people in. It is a visitor town at the moment, and I think that's probably the way it's going to stay. So I want to try and get a really powerful and vibrant story between these two areas of Queenscliff, and I want to try and push the township to become the start or closer to the start of the Great Ocean Road, so that it actually fits in with the other part of things that are going on. I've been in conservation probably of buildings around the town, and I think there are a few issues with planning and the way the council actually delegates and moves things around internally, and I think all that needs to be tidied up.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Our next speaker is, our next candidate is Ross Ebles. Ross, thank you.
Thank you, Phil. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Wadawurrung peoples, one of some 25 clans that form part of the Kulin Nation. I acknowledge and respect their continuing connection to the land, water, culture, and the contribution they make to the life of our community. I pay my respect to their past and present elders and their emerging leaders, and extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Firstly, thank you, Phil, and everyone involved with the combined community groups forum, and also welcome to my fellow candidates. And it is pleasing to see so many people running for council, and I'm very pleased to see that there is an increase in the amount of female candidates running for council. I think it's really important that we do have a change a little bit of the gender on council, and I think it's good to get different perspectives. And knowing most of the people who are candidates here tonight, I think the Borough of Queenscliff is going to be in excellent hands. I think there's everyone who can bring something different and unique, and I think everyone here has got the passion for the Borough of Queenscliff as well. From my point of view, obviously, if you don't know me, I've been here nearly 40 years now in the Borough of Queenscliff, and an active community member during my hospitality days, and obviously, if you don't know, I was the inaugural chairman of the Queenscliff Music Festival, so I'm very proud to see the success it's had, even though it wasn't able to continue this year. There's plenty of work to be done. I've been privileged to be the mayor for the past 11 months. And I still believe I have a lot to offer to our residents. As just so you know, I'm not a member of any political party, and I'm running again as an independent. One of the things I've really learned, particularly in the last 11 months as being mayor, is that the small things really do matter to our community. And I've also found that those small things, that's actually what the visitors like also when they come to the Borough of Queenscliff. They actually like to be able to walk the beach. They like to be able to walk in the parks, and making those parks and beaches present as well as possible, I think is crucial for the future of the Borough of Queenscliff, not only to our residents, but also to the visitors coming to the borough. As some of the community members might know, we've had discussions with QCA about, under the new Local Government Act, as Councillor Salter mentioned, with the local, there's a lot of new policies, but one of the things we can now do is set up a community assets committee, and I think that's what Donnie was alluding to as well. So we're going to set up a community asset committee to work closely with our community about the work we want to do at Shortlands Bluff. And by doing a asset committee, we're actually handing over the power, and to a certain degree we're handing over the budget to the community and entrusting the community to do what's right and what they want to do as well. As I said, small things do matter. We've got to think of where do we go with the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve. We've got heritage listings, permits, and Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve. What are the budgets, and what is the Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve going to look like in the future? It's doubled in size since council first took it over, And will the Borough of Queenscliff have the finances to actually run and look after that piece of important land? I will continue to work on better engagement with our community. I've been working hard to improve this over the last couple of years, and I think council is certainly making inroads into that. But then again, there's still more work to be done. I've been having monthly meetings with the QCA and the PLCA, and we've also had one meeting with the CEO with the combined community groups as well. This is something which I've been pushing for, and
Ross, thank you. Zelda Walters is our next candidate. Zelda, thank you. Unmute.
Thanks, Phil. Right, I'd just like to say we've lived here in the borough for almost 7 years and have been coming down for 30 years, and we've been made very welcome by the community since moving here. As to my background, I've worked in public relations, marketing, communications and public affairs, in industry bodies, financial institutions and in the not-for-profit sector. This has included management and consultant roles. So I believe my experience will stand me in good stead to represent the community as a councillor. I'm currently Secretary of the Point Lonsdale Queenscliff group, Plonk. Plonk is made up of locals and traders and is identifying opportunities to advance the borough and works with the council on these opportunities. In this role, I have regular contact with our new CEO, Martin Gill, and the Mayor. I'm retired and have as much time as is required to undertake the role of councillor, and I look forward to that challenge. Changes or improvements I'd like to see in the borough. Well, firstly, the council has got to do a lot of work to regain the trust and support of the community. There are a couple of very important words for this: effective consultation. I've spent a lot of time listening and talking to members of our community, both traders and residents, and getting feedback from them. The most common issue that's come up and needs to change is the comment, council doesn't listen to us. We fill in the surveys, bring up issues, but they go ahead and do what they want, or nothing happens. There is a frustration in the community. Council and councillors haven't listened to the community and have wasted rate funds on costly surveys and consultancy that haven't gone anywhere. I'd like to see a more consultative council, one that involves community participation, makes informed decisions on this participation, and then explains to the community why decisions have been made. We've got to bring the community along with us. Council needs to be transparent and cost-effective in its transactions on community issues. Agendas for the borough need to be guided by community needs, not what individual councillors want. I'd like to set in place a mechanism that gives the community a direct voice and have the council get feedback from the community on initiatives and plans it's looking to undertake. For example, messaging or emailing residents, asking for comments on projects, regular columns in the local papers, just lost myself, letting everyone know what's happening. Coming out of COVID, we'll have many challenges, especially in the business community, but we can also see it as an opportunity. So I'd like to see council coming up with ideas for community post-COVID and lockdown. I'd like to see council taking a proactive approach to getting the message across to the wider Victorian community that we are ready and open for business. Melburnians especially will be ready to travel out that have lockdown areas and having them come down here to spend time in our beautiful community will help businesses. Many regional areas are already doing this initiative and we don't want to be left behind. COVID has taught us that we can't survive on just tourism alone. Council needs to take a proactive approach to business to help grow a sustainable business community. You just have to look around at the number of businesses that are currently for sale to know that we have an issue here. Also, a lot of younger families are looking to come down to live here because it's a great place to bring up a family. That's an opportunity for growth, but shouldn't come at the expense of our heritage and our environment, both of which we all place great importance on. Then there's the issue of climate change. The impacts of climate change need to be recognised and included in any vision for our community. So I hope that answers the question. I look forward to speaking more about issues as we go along. Thanks.
Thank you, Zelda. Our next candidate to speak is Fleur Hewitt. Fleur, thank you.
Hi, Phil. Thank you to you and the combined community associations for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm thrilled to be a part of tonight's forum as I'm really excited about the borough's future. It's great to see so many people have put their hand up to represent the interests of our community, and I wish the candidates all the very best. If elected to council, I would ultimately be directed by what changes and improvements you, the community, want for our borough. Personally, I don't think we need any big ticket items. The place is pretty amazing as it is, but we do need to look after what we have. I believe we need to keep the momentum going with the community-led climate emergency response plan. In particular, I'm keen to see new target dates for both the council and the community to achieve carbon net zero emissions, a greater conversion to renewables and storage, and a switch to electric vehicles and the installation of electric vehicle charging stations in public spaces. We also need to focus on further revegetation and conservation initiatives, education for both locals and tourists so we all take ownership in preserving our natural environment, and new recycling ideas like discounted compost bins for residents or curbside organic waste bins and a split between plastics and glass. To help our businesses and organisations recover from the economic impact of COVID-19, we need to follow through with the proposed support and stimulus packages, cut red tape, support increased outdoor dining and establish greener spaces, help with COVID-safe plans, support our wonderful arts and cultural organisations, and advocate for new public transport options, like exploring whether the Port Phillip ferry could continue on from Portarlington to Queenscliff. New events would also be great to stimulate tourism and enhance our community enjoyment, particularly following the impacts of COVID-19. Some ideas could include a food and wine festival, a fishing and boating expo, a tour de Bellarine that ends in the Borough, a white night, an antique fair, a colour run, a big outdoor screen that shows sports events like the Australian Open, and an outdoor theatre show in summer. We should jump on the announcement made by the federal government last week to allocate $1 billion to councils to upgrade local roads, footpaths and street lighting. We should also look to change the crossing on Hesse Street into a zebra crossing so pedestrians have right of way, and create more safe crossings around the borough, particularly on the Flinders Street Bellarine highway stretch, as these roads can be treacherous for pedestrians, particularly for the nippers in summer. As a mother of 2 young girls, I'm keen to ensure that the safety of our community remains of greatest importance to council. For children, we also need an improved skate park, a new BMX track in a suitable location, and a designated space for our playgroups, the toy library and other activities. A 24-hour toilet in the Hesse Street shops is a must, as are more dog bag dispensers in Queenscliff and bins in Point Lonsdale. At its core, I believe we need a council that effectively engages with our community, is transparent in all that it does, and properly manages ratepayers' money. I believe that I have the expertise, passion, and commitment to support council to achieve these initiatives and secure a bright and sustainable future for our borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Fleur. Our next candidate to speak is Rob Minty. Rob, thank you.
Thanks very much, Phil. The question, what changes or improvements would I like to see in the borough of Queenscliff? Most of the key changes and improvements have, in my opinion, most of them have occurred or are occurring as we speak through the change that the Victorian Local Government Act 2020 implementation will show. The changes that have already occurred at a local level have reset the engagement principles and council openness and transparency, and a focus on residents and local businesses who sit at the core of council's decision making. There is definitely an acceptance that these things needed to change and a concerted effort to fast track the many matters that have either stalled or have dropped off the priority list. This was a priority this year to review where major projects were and their development to restart. I've been a councillor for 10 months. I won the seat vacated by Tony Francis. The second important catalyst for change is the Local Government Act, which was referred to earlier by the Mayor and Councillor Salter. And the Local Government Act sets out a clear guidelines for the way councils should act in engaging with residents and the environment, and how it must be at the core of the decision making. And council's openness and reporting requirements to its residents. Types of engagement include everything from simple polling online to elaborate citizen juries for very large projects. I have, during the COVID-19 pandemic, publicised my contact widely and have been used by many in the community who contacted me. I believe for many residents and interested parties, a clearly defined objective and scope for projects is a must. I would like council to keep its promise to its residents to deliver a coastal and marine management plan as required under the Marine Coastal Act. A planning scheme amendment that gives our planning officers the tools to fight inappropriate developments and to deliver on the climate response plan that feeds directly into the new council plan for 21-22. Last but not least, I would like council to progress the 2018 Borough of Queenscliff Heritage Review to its second phase to include not only the heritage-worthy structures, but open areas culminating in a major amendment that would see Borough formally recognised as a special place that would be afforded special protection, including in VCAT. Thank you.
Phil?
I think Phil might be muted.
There you go. The cardinal sin for a Zoomer, muting your own microphone. Thank you, Rob. Our next candidate is Jackie Pearce. Jackie, thank you.
Hi, Phil. Thank you to the PLCA, QCA volunteers and also the CBCA volunteers for pulling together an amazing webinar forum. I'd also like to thank the current 90 attendees that are sitting in the audience. Thank you for your time and your interest in being here with us tonight. It shows there's a real interest in our community for local democracy. So I'm really pleased to see that so many of you are joining us tonight. I'd also, in addition to the acknowledgement of countries that have also occurred, I'd really like to thank our Wadawurrung people for the care that they took of the land and seas that we enjoy and call home today for in excess of 60,000 years. And also note that the land was never ceded, never was, and that's something we always need to acknowledge as we move forward in reconciliation with our local Indigenous community and on a national level as well. So I really don't want to do a whole lot of time talking about me and who I am, because the question we were asked to answer was what changes or improvements would you like to see in the Borough of Queenscliff? You can read my 300-word candidate statement in your ballot packs that have arrived in your letterbox, so I don't need to repeat all of that. So I'm going to start very much with the question of what changes or improvements I would like to see if I was actually elected to become one of your councillors. I agree with what people have been saying, Susan and Ross and a number of others that have talked about we need to finish the projects that have been on the agenda for a long time. So Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve is just one example of those projects that have dragged on and on for many years and have led to the sense of frustration within our community. In the very first instance, I think we need to get better at engaging with our community much earlier. We need to ensure that we move forward together as a community and as the elected councillors to represent that community on any pieces of work or any projects that we're doing, so that we do them together. Too many projects in the borough have never started, they've had false starts, or they've completely stalled because we're not moving forward with a shared purpose and a common understanding of what it is we're trying to achieve for our community. This mismatch of community and council messaging also makes it extremely hard to attract and retain state and federal funding for any of the projects that we want to do for our community. We need to get better at communicating with our community, how we, the council, is performing in relation to the overall council plan and also in relation to the annual implementation plans, so that our community can actually see what's being achieved and what's not being achieved and why. We need regular report cards to our community so that we can show what council staff have been working on and what they have achieved in relation to the council plan that we must develop with the community. That's a new mandate in the Local Government 2020 Act. You need to take concrete local action regarding national and international issues, which includes COVID, climate emergency and coastal inundation. The borough needs to also continue to do the core and fundamental things well, but I don't just mean roads, rates and rubbish. I'm talking about amenities that serve both residents and visitors. So that includes public barbecues, toilets, benches, all those things that people have talked about. We can and must do a better job of working with COG Bellarine Ward Councillors G21 and the state government to adopt a damage avoidance approach that prevents damage rather than continuing with a damage control approach that becomes reactive to damage that's already been done and is not reversible. This work also needs to look at potentially extending the Borough of Queenscliff boundary to include the Point Lonsdale residents west of Fellows Road. All proposed potential projects need to be fully costed with a detailed financial plan prior to being included in budgets, and these projects must align with the overall council plan that we will have developed with our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Our next candidate is Amanda Hoysted. Amanda, thank you.
Hi, I'm Amanda Hoysted. I think I'm the only candidate that has actually put up a whole lot of policies for everyone to see. If you go to my Facebook page, you'll see that I've been doing a policy a day. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that all of these would happen, and I know that there's a lot to learn going on to council. Now, I believe council's actually been pretty well run, and there's some things that are well run but need to be brought in together, such as the waste and recycling. Now, everybody loves the hard waste collection. We all love the hard waste collection. But why is the hard waste collection in March, the e-waste collection in May, and we don't have a visit from the Detox Your Home from Sustainability Victoria or Australia all at the same time? I'm proposing that there should be a coordinated waste and recycling fortnight. That all these things are brought in together and maybe even involve the charities. So some of the things that previously have gone to landfill are actually going to charities, or maybe we could have a borough-wide community garage sale, which has been done in a lot of communities and brings tourists in. So, waste, but also tourism. I also am a great believer in the Borough First policy, that the traders and businesses within the borough should be given first priority on all council tenders. A business should always be put the way of the tradesmen and businesses within the borough. I'm also, believe that we should be working closely with the local CFA to create neighbourhood safer places. There are no neighbourhood safer places within the borough. Now, this is going to be quite a hard one to institute. Finding those, I've been talking with the CFA, finding those spots is going to be hard. We acknowledge that. But there is a need for somewhere, at least one, because if the Point Estate, and the winds would come from the north to northwest, if we were cut off, we need somewhere to go. Now, I believe a whole audit of the borough should be done, that the CFA has worked very well with local residents, but it doesn't include all council land, maritime land, etc. I believe there should be an off-lead dog area in Point Lonsdale, preferably fenced. I would like to continue the community gardens so that there's one in Point Lonsdale. There are a number of things that are already being done, and are well done, but need to be extended and coalesced into something that is more in keeping with what the community wants. I also believe that we've got a big challenge with getting people back from Melbourne, back into the tourism sector, and we have a very good following at the moment, but we would need to do something to differentiate ourselves. Now, the outdoor dining, everybody's doing it, but we do have the joy of having a beautiful main street. So, and the harbour with the sparkling water will bring people in. Perhaps we need to do more to bring people down here by promoting the borough a bit. I'm possibly not as articulate as some of the other candidates.
Thanks, Amanda. Our final candidate to speak on in this part one this evening is Michael Grout. Thank you, Michael.
So I'm not sure if that's a short straw or a long straw, Phil, but look, good evening to you, candidates, and everybody else. Thanks to PLCA and QCA and Phil for this forum and for your acknowledgement of the Wadawurrung people. Look, when I came to Queenscliff in the 1980s, I really liked the seaside. I loved the heritage feel, and I liked the people that I met. Now, here comes an image in words. We've heard lots of words, and here's an image. I felt like Winnie the Pooh, entirely surrounded by water and with a big pot of honey. Now I'm standing 40 years later for our community and environment. And I'm standing as an independent candidate. So this means that I think we can be smarter financially by better planning with our community before we start projects, and so reduce the spend on consultants while still keeping rate increases within the cap. Community engagement is going to enable us to act on climate change. I firmly believe that, and I think it helps our local economy. We will switch to cleaner energy, we can increase energy efficiencies and reduce erosion, storm and fire risks, and we do that by engaging traders and suppliers within our community and within the region. Now, people who live here and visit, they like the seaside. They come, we live here for the seaside. We love the ice cream, we love the fish and chips. So better looking after our wonderful parks and coasts is good for residents and for businesses. Effective business cross-promotion, regional promotion, as well as local shopping supports local businesses in this COVID time. And it's really important to me that we keep businesses vital. We need a main street. By looking after our wonderful heritage and maritime buildings, as well as our Aboriginal artistic and sporting heritage and cultures, I believe we create an environment both residents and visitors enjoy, just as we must continue to care for locals who most need it. So my wife, Janine Hurst, and I have lived in Queenscliff for 30 years. Our 4 boys went to kinder, school, played sport with the Cooters and have worked here. And during this time, I've learned about some of the borough issues. I believe, as other people have said, that mostly people like things how they are. But there are a few frustrations, and I think we can do some things a bit better. And so I'm talking about engaging with people to identify those opportunities, then working with councillors and the CEO and staff to make the sort of improvements that I've mentioned before and that other people have been talking about. I'm committed to Point Lonsdale and Queenscliff, and I believe that when our community develops common purpose with the council, we build trust and we create a better borough. Let's keep some honey in the pot. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Michael. Just to make sure my little spreadsheet hasn't gone wrong, is there any candidate who hasn't had a chance to speak? Good, thank you. The second part is there are 3 questions that have been provided to the candidates earlier, and we'll go through each question one at a time. Each candidate has a chance to speak on each of those questions. For the first question is, how would you enable the active involvement of the community in council decision making? And we'll start with Amanda Hoisted, please. Amanda.
Right, thanks, Phil. I was actually thinking quite closely about this, and one of the things I thought, oh, council should be live streamed. Well, it is. And I had a look at the last council meeting and it only had 38 people that viewed that YouTube video. Now, I believe that the council's actually doing quite a good job. It's whether people are taking advantage of what council's doing. Now, the development of the hub is a case in point. They had drop-ins, they had questionnaires, they had community applications for community involvement, and it all worked. They were good turn-ups at the drop-ins, and people were able to put their words in. Now, whether everybody knew about it, it is one of my points that community decisions should evolve from the community. So when the...
Thank you, Amanda. Our next candidate to speak is Zelda Walters, please. Zelda.
Thanks, Phil. I'll take my time a little more on answering this. But anyway, here we go. Firstly, I think council needs to be proactive and not reactive on issues. As I've said earlier, I'd like to set in place a mechanism that gives the community a direct voice and have the council get feedback from the community on initiatives and plans it's looking to undertake. This could be by messaging or emailing residents, asking for comments on projects, as well as via the Borough website. I've already mentioned reinstating the regular Mayor and CEO columns in the local papers and letting everyone know what's happening and giving updates on current issues, not just on what's been done in the past. We have a wealth of expertise in our community, and this should be recognised and tapped into where appropriate. We've got experts to hand here in the Borough, people with a good knowledge of their fields of expertise, and also...
Thank you. Next candidate. Thank you, Zelda. Our next candidate is Ross Ebles, please.
Thank you very much, Phil. And yeah, it's a good question. I think as I said in the introduction, we've certainly been, as a council, working hard to actually improve our communication and involving our community in the decision making. And I'm just going to hold up a prop here, which is quite a few flyers now we are sending to our residents. So the one I showed you was about our budget process, and one of the few councils in the state which we went out last year and actually asked for input and information about our budget process. So much so that some of the items that were raised, council was actually able to do straight away, such as the footpath in Nelson Road by the health centre. But certainly the creation of the community asset committees will help do that. Obviously with the hub, I know when we first had our first meeting at the hub, the people came in and said, where are all the plans, where are all the plans? But we actually just had empty white pages and said, you tell us. And I think that's been really successful. And
Thanks, Ross. Our next candidate to speak is Jackie Pearce. Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Phil. I think the new council has the perfect opportunity to do community involvement and community engagement differently and better than they've ever done it in the past. The new Local Government Act, Section 55, is all about community accountability and community engagement. We are mandated by legislation to have our community engagement policy in place by the 1st of March 2021, and we actually need the community to tell us what should be in that council policy. One of my key platforms is about bringing the voice of youth to the council table. So I would like us to explore options around having a youth council so that we can have that young voice inextricably linked to our overall council. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate to speak, please, is Michael Grout. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Look, I'd really like to see us return to open council meetings with questions from the community. I'd like to see a return to the council advisory groups in each of the functional areas like planning and heritage, business, environment, wellbeing, and so on. Look, we need processes that engage the community from the start. And I think a good example is what's currently happening with the current climate action response plan. So talking with the community about needs, then planning the project is the process. I think councillors should be constantly monitoring the community for needs, and by regular contact with stakeholders and careful listening is how we engage our community.
Thank you, Michael. And our next candidate to speak, please, is Fleur Hewitt. Thank you, Fleur.
If elected, I would look to new ways to engage with the community. For example, I, like Michael, suggests that we have new advisory groups, one for each of the current strategic objectives. Each group could consist of community members with appropriate expertise, representatives from relevant community organisations, council staff and other interested persons. The groups could meet with the councillor responsible for the particular portfolio every month and discuss current issues and possible outcomes. Another idea is around key projects. Firstly, at the beginning of a project, we should hold specific workshops which include presentations from council, expert guest speakers and open discussions with the community. And secondly, throughout projects, we should conduct regular webinars with project leads, with Q&A sections and feedback opportunities. New avenues for engagement like this will ensure that the community is part of decision making, projects are at all times community led and minimise our spend on consultants.
Thank you, Fleur. Our next candidate to speak is Jeffrey Matthews. Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Phil. I believe the council is the community, and it's very important that the councillors and the workers in the community in the council are able to discuss all the projects that are being presented, a lot of the financial items that are being presented, and the council needs to be a bit more open. I attended a couple of council meetings where the public was allowed in to discuss things, and then the meeting was closed and they were asked to leave so that closed matters could be discussed. I think it would probably be a better idea if the public was involved, if the closed matters were discussed before the public came, so that people don't feel like they're just being moved off. Look, there's so much expertise in this community that if it's tapped.
Thank you, Jeff. Our next candidate to speak is Susan Salter. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you very much. So in this year, what we have been doing is running a Facebook page, and we've been running a much more extensive email system to people. One of the problems that we have, not problems, but it's a delightful problem, is that about 25% of our population is over 70. And so how do you get them to engage in more modern technology? So you can run webinars, but the 90-year-olds don't participate very well in it. So we've been trying to do different platforms, you know, the social media platform, because we're hoping to engage our younger people. And then we're still advertising in the newspapers because the oldies like to read that. But you would have seen the brochures that have come out in the past few days for people to participate in the climate consultancy. And we're hoping that we're going to get a broad.
Thank you, Susan. Our next candidate is Rob Minty. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks again, Phil. How would we actively involve our people? The mechanism to engage residents in important projects and plans is now prescribed within the Local Government Act. The policy is actually being trialled, as people have spoken about, actually being trialled through the development of the climate response plan. And so we're using that as a bit of a guide. But community will be involved, as prescribed by the Act, in the planning and financial management, community vision, council plan, financial plan, asset plan, revenue and rating plan. They will be invited to participate fully in those programs. So there will be, gratefully, happily, a greater involvement in our community in the core business, and then we'll be able to break it up into those other decisions.
Thank you, Rob. Our next candidate to speak is Donnie Grigow. Donnie, thank you.
Hi, how are you tonight? Yeah, I've just to answer this question. I think the improvement of communication with the engagement of the community has to be much better than just Facebook and just posting up sort of web pages on the council website. We should go off and tap local residents on the shoulder, you know, direct contact with the people that actually matter, and actually try to engage them into putting their hand up to join merit and skill-based committees to have their say and input into the community. Thanks.
Thanks, Donnie. That concludes. I'll just make sure everyone has had a chance to comment.
Had a go, Phil.
I'm sorry, Isabel. That's why I keep checking. Isabel Tolhurst. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you, Phil. As mentioned in my introduction, I think actively involving the community in council decision-making means consultation from inception, not halfway down the road when the frustration reaches peak. I think it means considering, as Donnie mentioned, the various mediums required to engage our diverse community: letter drops, physical meetings, calls, online polls, a combination. This is how I've campaigned, and it is effective, and people respond when you pick up the phone and call them or meet them in a medium that suits them. Where there are reference groups and committees established, they should be adequately engaged and the expertise used. I've mentioned changing the format of public meetings to be more two-way, more conversational. The Local Government Act has also been mentioned, and this calls for the creation of a community vision, a deliberative and deeply deliberative document to be created that captures the aspirations of the community. So it's mandated that we do that. I believe councillors should be visible and accessible. I have been in my campaign, and if elected, I will continue to be.
Thank you, Isabel. Our second question, and before I give the question, just a caution to all the candidates, and I assume that all of you have been through some form of borough candidate training in terms of your obligation both as a candidate and as a future councillor to not cause to make specific statements about detailed planning issues which could later disqualify you from voting on that in the council forum. The second question: over the past two council terms, heritage, environment and planning have been challenging issues in the borough. Briefly, what are your thoughts regarding specific heritage, environment and planning outcomes for the borough of the future? And as I said, I caution you about specifics. That's not a impediment by you. That's an impediment by the Local Government Act. Thank you. And we start with Rob Minty. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Phil. We must complete the Level 10 Heritage Review of 2018, which is looking at a 2009 study. Hence the two periods we haven't done much in this space. The review recommended a number of buildings, gardens, trees and future research. This would then lead to a reference document to council and then the major pieces of work to the planning minister. The objective is to have the borough recognised as a special place. That gives an indication to all, including VCAT, that the borough has special status. We are currently covered by a 1984 urban conservation study that offers little or no defence to inappropriate developments.
Thank you, Rob. And Jackie Pearce, please. Jackie.
Thanks, Phil. My first thought when I read that question was, if there actually have been so many issues over the last 8 years, then do we actually have the correct conditions and protections in our current planning scheme? If so, great. If not, why not? Is it time for a review? And how do we communicate those protections and conditions to our community? Secondly, I think we need to clearly articulate to our community the difference in the roles and responsibilities of the various levels of government that actually control the various different parcels of land within our borough. We're not in charge of all of them. If it's Crown land, it's a state government planning issue. So I think we need to be really clear with our community about that. And we need to develop better relationships and advocacy to ensure that the views of the community are championed in things like the Bellarine Peninsula, distinct areas and landscape. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Our next candidate to speak is Fleur Hewitt. Thank you, Fleur.
I believe in preserving the borough's rich heritage and leveraging from it to support our local economy. I support the finalisation of the Heritage Review, further avenue of honour tree planting, the establishment of a significant tree register and the protection of our heritage buildings. I also believe we need to have greater tourism activities at Fort Queenscliff, the Maritime Museum and the Queenscliff train station, from modern interactive experiences to drinking and eating opportunities. In terms of environmental outcomes, we need to finalise the Climate Emergency Response Plan and focus on further environmental initiatives that I've discussed earlier. We also need to give new life to the main streets, including by widening footpaths, adding more trees, increasing outdoor dining, improving street furniture, adding fairy lights and revitalising the facades.
Fleur, thank you. Our next candidate to speak is Donnie Grigow. Thank you, Donnie.
And I'm mute. Yep, sure. The revised Local Government Act mandates greater community engagement. I'd like the council to establish skills-based committees to complete the Coastal Management Plan and the Environmental and Built Heritage Plan. These plans would be incorporated into the Queenscliff planning scheme to lock in these values. I understand that when the planning scheme was last reviewed several years ago, the council rejected the vast majority of recommendations made by the community members and our two community organisations, the PLCA and the QCA. The next review of the planning scheme must build in community input to maintain and protect the borough's distinct character. Thank you.
Thank you, Donnie. And just be aware your video is turned off, Donnie.
Oh, no.
The next candidate to speak is Isabel Tolhurst. Isabel?
Thank you. These are all significant issues for the borough, and I believe in planning for the future of the borough, we cannot look at these issues or areas in silos. Broadly, I think there is often a middle ground. We can preserve our heritage and plan for a future borough simultaneously. Heritage is protected through community use and reinvigoration by not remaining staid. Our planning, development and environmental management must anticipate and respond to the needs of current and future communities by striking a balance in how space is used. It must honour and recognise heritage, protect our environment and manage the unique challenges we're facing in this area, planning for a sustainable future. And to Jackie's point, outcomes in these areas must respect the schemes, policies and the government tiers in place and use them to develop, to deliver the best outcomes for the community.
Thank you, Isabel. Our next candidate to speak is Amanda Hoysted. Amanda, thank you.
Yes, and like all the others, I believe that there's some very curly issues to balancing between community and the action plans. But I believe our heritage and environment are not only a pull for tourism, but is something that could be monetised. Now, we did have the Phryne Fisher episode filmed in Queenscliff, and I think it could be pursued that we could be used as a basis for filming, arts, background for another candidate said a White Night, I think it was Fleur, White Night Festival, something like that, especially the lighthouses. Now, the planning was the lowest thing on the customer satisfaction survey in the last customer satisfaction survey. Even then, it was still better than a lot of other councils and small rural areas. But planning is something that needs to be streamlined, especially for the community groups. I believe that community groups should have no greater than 3 pages in their applications, and that they would work better, that they have pre-filled forms with contact names, and that would help local community groups.
Thank you, Amanda. Our next candidate to speak tonight is Ross Ebles. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you very much, Phil. And we're redoing a heritage review at the moment, which is going to be a really important document moving forward for the Borough of Queenscliff. Obviously, we have heritage overlays. We also have planning schemes within the borough. Some are relevant to Point Lonsdale, some are relevant to Queenscliff, and it's about having that balance of looking after our heritage, but also allowing for people to look after their properties in the future as well. I'd like to think that the heritage review would also include significant trees. Maybe we don't need a separate significant tree register. Maybe it could be part of that heritage review as well, because we live in a special place, and as our motto says, we're a safe harbour for seafarers and travellers. So I think we need to continue to make sure that we continue to provide a safe harbour for our residents. I agree with Amanda talking about opportunities. I know Lewis Hamilton actually did his music video at the Point Lonsdale Pier earlier in the year.
Thank you, Ross. Our next candidate to speak is Michael Grout. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Look, I'll start by just endorsing what Fleur said earlier. So I'm not going to repeat any of that. Just to pick up on what you were saying, Ross. Look, I understand the new council is going to be contributing to development of new plans and strategies, like the coastal management plan, which I'm very excited about. We're hearing about the new heritage review, but I would like to see a separate significant tree policy and register. I think it's really important. Doesn't have to be that extensive to start with. Incredibly important because we haven't had one. And the consequences lead to some mismanagement of vegetation. Look, I'm really looking forward to engaging in this. I think councillors are elected to maintain the essential characters of Point Lonsdale and Queenscliff. And in this, we're constantly challenged by people who want to push the envelope. I talked to a real estate agent last week who said, if you get on council, for God's sake, stop dividing old Queenscliff. I was surprised.
Thank you, Michael. Our next candidate to speak is Jeffrey Matthews.
Yes, I believe that we need to identify, conserve and enhance our significant historical areas. And I believe this is being undertaken. I've been looking through this Queenscliff Urban Conservation Study, which is very good, and it needs to be followed up. Also, I think we should be making sure that we follow environmental best practice in all things that we do within the borough, and that it's most important that the coastal management plan is sorted out. And I believe the balance between planning and growth in the borough with strong guidelines is essential, so that when people actually go to do things within the borough, they're able to work within guidelines that they know that there won't be too many problems. That's all I'd say on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Our next candidate to speak is Susan Salter. Susan, thank you.
I think I've got the long straw. So heritage and environment have been two of my great passions over this term in council. I have driven, I've been the chair of the Avenue of Honour Committee, and I'm delighted to see there's new trees planted there, but there is still much more to do. I have been driving the completion of stage 1 of the heritage review because that will protect our heritage buildings. But also part of that will be that some of our modern buildings will in fact be listed on that. We have actually had a number of our community experts who have contributed very wisely to that, e.g. you, Carmen Bell, e.g. Rosemary Brown, and made significant contributions to the new heritage plan, updating the documents that Jeffrey Matthews just showed you. The Marine and Coastal Act will be a significant step forward for what we can all see that we can do.
Susan, thank you. And last in against this question is Zelda Walters. Zelda, thank you.
Realistically, this is a very big question and needs more than 1 minute to answer, I would say. Briefly though, I believe that heritage and environment are very important issues in the borough. Our community is based on its history from its beginning with Lieutenant Governor Charles La Trobe, its important role during wartime, and then with our beautiful beaches, walks, bird life and vegetation. We have a wide range of important groups that make up our community, such as sporting, arts, volunteer, business and aged care. All should be consulted to get their thoughts and ideas on where we go and what we do regarding the future of the borough. I believe the future direction has to include and encompass a shared vision for the borough, including climate challenges that face us in all respect of the growth of our community and tourism. Thank you.
Thank you, Zelda. We now move on to our third question. Councillors work together like board members. Additionally, much of the council's revenue is already committed to the organisational structure of the council and associated legislative compliance requirements. Please discuss your financial and management skills and give examples of where you have worked in a collegiate environment to deliver complex projects or programs. Our first candidate to speak is Ross Ebles. Ross, thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Obviously, as a councillor, I've been quite working hard to ensure that the council is financially responsible. And obviously, as we sit here today, the council is one of the few councils in the state that's actually debt-free. So that's been a really exciting thing, having that balance between, you know, knowing what the basics you need to do, but making sure we're financially responsible as well. And that has actually enabled us during this COVID-19 to do what we've been able to do, which is really important. Obviously, I've come from a business and tourism background, so running our own hotels and restaurants and setting up major projects for other people within the region as well, working with the Day and the Green Corporation and big businesses like that. So I'm certainly well and truly have the necessary requirements to fulfil that obligation as a councillor.
Thank you, Ross.
Thanks, Phil.
And our next candidate to speak is Susan Salter. Susan, thank you.
So I'm a maths teacher by trade. I was a board member of Corangamite Catchment Authority. I was president of the neighbourhood house for more than 10 years and brought it back from no money in the bank to more than $50,000. Treasurer at the School Council for Bellarine Secondary College. I have been a councillor and mayor in the Borough of Queenscliff. I've held the finance and governance portfolio for a year. I'm on the audit committee. I'm delighted that the council is debt-free. We're one of the few councils in the state like that. And I have a very long, extensive experience at working as part of a team, making compromise decisions, listening to people, fiercely arguing for ideas, and then driving them to completion. You can see my work in the Avenue of Honour tree system. And if you were there at the climate change declaration, you have to learn to bide your time to win your cause, and you cannot do it in one moment. You have to work at it, you have to persuade people, you have to listen to people, and then you have to carry it through.
Thank you, Susan. Our next candidate to speak is Jeffrey Matthews. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Well, my experience is I was in a business in South Australia which employed around 100 people, and I ran that for, it was a family business, and we ran it for over 70 years. And I've also been on the TAFE colleges and the South Australian Guild of Furniture Manufacturers and committee levels over the worrying time when tariffs were dropping and all that sort of thing. I'm currently working in a small business in Queenscliff and Point Lonsdale, where I restore houses and dwellings and commercial properties. And I'm involved as the Commodore of the Queenscliff Lonsdale Yacht Club, and we just had some quite sensitive infrastructure implemented down there by connecting to the sewer, which the clubhouse hadn't been since its instigation, and it took many, many hours. So I'm actually easy to approach, able to listen, research on topic.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Our next candidate to speak is Amanda Hoisted. Amanda, thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Before moving down here permanently 11 years ago, I worked for multi-million-dollar companies doing supply chain for Myer and such like, obviously working with groups of people to get the product in the right place at the right time. Since moving down here, I've opened my own business, and it's a small business. It's a craft shop in Leopold. We've had to get through the COVID times. We have to budget because all such things are seasonal, and I never spend money that I don't have. So one of my big aims would be to keep, as Susan was saying, the budget of the borough in surplus, or at the very least, even. I am quite committed to keeping businesses on the right side of the ledger. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. Our next candidate, please, is Fleur Hewitt. Thank you, Fleur.
Thanks, Phil. I have strong financial management and teamwork skills. I'm currently working part-time as a legal manager for property and strategy at a large international healthcare company, and I was formerly a senior associate at one of Melbourne's top law firms. My expertise is in areas of law core to council's functioning, including property development and construction, and I have a special interest in planning and environmental issues. I manage a dynamic team, and I'm responsible for legal risk across the company's entire Australian property portfolio, which includes over 450 different sites. One of the key functions of my role is consulting and collaborating with others in order to achieve and deliver outcomes for the business. When facilitating multi-million-dollar property transactions, developments, and leasing opportunities, I have to engage closely with a number of other people, from business leads and counterparties to regulatory officials. We all need to work together to get the deals done, which often includes significant negotiations with hard deadlines.
Thank you, Fleur. And our next candidate is Rob Minty. Rob, please.
Thanks, Phil. Seems like an elevator speech. I have formal business qualifications of Master of Business Administration from RMIT University. I've worked and managed large complex organisations here and internationally. I was head of distribution for Australia's largest travel retailer, a group which was formed to create retail brands and to sell a diverse range of products under a single brand. I also was the regional general manager for Asia Pacific for a consumer imaging company, one of the world's largest photographic companies. In fact, coordinating different country managers, sales agents, and adopt and adapt to a single strategy. I worked and controlled 14 different countries.
Thank you, Rob. Our next speaker, next candidate is Zelda Walters. Zelda, thank you.
I think that collegiate might be the wrong word here. A term I'd use is working in a team environment. I've loved working as part of a team to achieve goals. It's how you can get things done effectively and is integral to the success of any project. Also, communication plays a big part in a team working well together, as does mutual respect between members of the team. As to financial skills, I have a qualification in business administration. In a number of roles, I was responsible for ensuring projects adhered to firm budgets that were set. I was also able to assess where cost savings could be made, as well as more effective use of equipment, suppliers, and products. I've been involved in projects that require a good understanding of issues that could affect outcomes, and also managed a family property business. Thank you.
Thank you, Zelda. Our next candidate to speak, please, is Jackie Pearce. Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Phil. I have tertiary qualifications in public policy and management, and that includes studies in public finance, and I've also completed the Australian Institute of Company Directors course. This gives me a very sound and thorough understanding of the need for efficient and effective governance and stewardship of the borough. It is the responsibility of the staff to operationalise and implement the actions required to meet the strategic directions in the council plan. The council plan must be developed with our community. You elect us to represent you. My entire professional life, 30 plus years, and the last 20 of those self-employed running my own business, has involved me with many complex projects with multi-million-dollar budgets. Locally, I was involved in saving the childcare centre when the private enterprise running it at the time was going to close the doors. I was school council president during the complete rebuild of Point Lonsdale Primary School, and I'm currently working on the Bellarine Community Health Eric Tolliday Units redevelopment project, which will require significant capital funding. I also was a NDIS campaign coordinator for 3.5 years.
Thank you, Jackie. Our next candidate to speak is Michael Grout. Michael, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Look, I've managed $1 million+ budgets for trainers and organisation development consultants. So we're delivering training and leadership outcomes. But look, honestly, not always on budget. So I've lived the experience of not always being on budget. I've also managed my own business with revenue about 150,000, always on budget. Not quite in the league of Donald Trump, but I'll guarantee I paid more tax. Now, teamwork skills to deliver programs. I've worked in organisation development, so I train people in teamwork skills and processes needed to deliver programs. Now, we focus on process and skills like listening, problem solving, decision making. We identify and call out the ineffective behaviours like interrupting and groupthink. A team with enough process capability will perform, and I can add value with process skills and financial literacy.
Thank you, Michael. Our next candidate to speak is Isabel Tolhurst. Isabel, thank you.
Currently, I work at a not-for-profit running a national media program for young people, which requires collaborative development of strategy and management of budget with executive directors and our CEO. This process also requires significant collaboration with young people and media network to ensure we're fulfilling our vision. This process or focus on collaboration and maintaining collegiate relationships and good working environments are essential for accountability and doing the best we can with our tight budget as a not-for-profit. This will help me manage council's limited budget and manage complex projects and programs. Formerly, I worked at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and supported the rollout of a $190 million international volunteer program with staff and volunteers in 26 countries across the Indo-Pacific. This required me to have strong relationships with all stakeholders, including federal government, to ensure effective program delivery. This deep collaboration, high-level stakeholder management and large budget management will position me well for the role of councillor.
Isabel, thank you. And our final candidate to speak on this question tonight is Donnie Grigau. Donnie, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone who runs a commercial operation like the Shelter Shed will tell you that's all about teamwork, regulations, financial management, and listening to the customer. My work involves planning, executing, and reviewing our performance in constantly evolving commercial and legislative environment. Obviously, COVID-19 has made things very difficult, but it also means we need to adapt by working smarter and stay viable and keep the team happy. I think the same process applies to being a productive counsellor, where you need to listen to the clients who are the ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Donnie. Just a quick check. Everybody's responded to that question. Good. Okay. So we're going to part 3 off the question bank, and we're currently sitting at 8:28. And I would start not with the question, but the most highest polled statement from Margaret Farron Price, who said there's one 90-year-old attending. So well done, Margaret. Welcome, and good to see you. The next question was about, and you should all be able to see these on your screen, the candidates. In December last year, the Borough declared a climate emergency. How do you see this influencing the council's work over the next 4 years? And we start off with Michael Grout, please.
Yeah, okay, that's a great question, and thanks for that. Look, climate emergency is going to affect us very significantly in the next 4 years. We'll be working with the community to identify the risks, understand the problem, and come up with the local response. So the community response plan is going to be an exciting opportunity for all of us. You know, council is going to have to find the resources to facilitate the implementation of this plan. Now, I'm actually really excited about getting on with the job of responding to climate problems.
Thank you, Michael. Jackie Pearce, please.
Thank you. Look, was thought the motion that was passed by the Borough of Queenscliff was significant in December 2019, and the motion and the decisions that are incorporated in that will need to be intrinsically linked to the next 4-year council plan and the annual implementation plans that flow from that council plan. The climate emergency response plan that's flowing from those motions needs to be developed very closely in partnership with our community, and I welcome the opportunity that council have already put out for significant community input into that. I think it's going to be a key that we work in partnership with a whole range of key stakeholders, all levels of government, as well as our own local community, to get the best outcomes around the climate emergency, which includes the need to look at coastal inundation. Coastal inundation is not going to go away. It's complex and it's difficult, but we need to look at that just as much as the climate emergency. Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie. And Zelda Walters, please.
Right. Talking with locals, I know there's a wide range of opinions on climate change, but I also know the new Local Government Act requires councils to work with the community on the issue of climate change, and it's pleasing to see that council is already calling for community participation in the working group to address the issue. State and federal governments play an important role in this too. The bottom line is that climate change is hitting our hip pockets, higher insurance premiums, and whether we'll be able to actually get insurance because of possible flood and storm damage is certainly a concern that needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Zelda. Isabel Tolhurst, please.
I would initially commend the work of the Queenscliff Climate Action Group and the incumbent council for passing the declaration and for triggering, or what it triggered, creation of a climate emergency response plan. I think they are fantastic things for our community that will ensure the sustainability for future generations. But I see the declaration and plan as influencing council's work deeply, in fact, impacting everything we do. There's a question in this thread about, environmental action versus roads, rates and rubbish, or, conventional business. I do not think these things are mutually exclusive. And in fact, the treatment of the second lot of things should be dealt under the lens of the climate emergency response plan and the declaration that was made last year. Council can provide good governance, financing and support to ensure that it's an equitable process of engagement with community and a lasting plan that really benefits the borough.
Great. Thanks, Isabel. Rob Minty, please.
Thanks, Phil. What a lot of people don't realise, I think, is that council is obliged to take account of climate change in all its forms because it has a community responsibility in all aspects of climate change. It has insurance issues, it has public welfare issues, it has ageing issues, it has all sorts of things to take into account. And these things are not a matter of choice as far as council is concerned. It's a matter of having to take account of that. So what we've got to do is mitigate the costs to make sure that the things we put in place, and in some cases we've done that, actually save money for the community. LED lights, those types of things when you're looking at CO2 emissions and so on. So there's plenty of ways to save money, but it's really not a choice for council. It is a must do for council.
Thanks, Rob. Our next to speak on the question is Donnie Grigow. Thanks, Donnie.
I'd just like to say I'm actually no expert on climate change, but I've referred back to like the skill-based committees to recommend what to do, and then you would actually, these recommendations are actually taken into general sort of operations of the council. So it'll just come up to as general business. So I don't think we need to take it any further.
Okay, thank you, Donnie. Our next candidate to speak, please, is Susan Salter.
So I wrote the declaration and I tried to bed in it into core business of council. So for every major decision, they have to look at all the issues of climate change, including up to the audit committee has to look at how council's behaved in terms of climate change. But we have done many more things. You know, we have put LED lights around. We have been buying in green power. We have been turning our community, our public community, into the greenest community that it can be. We have the best history of recycling of all of the councils in the G21 region. And of course, next year we will have food going into our green bins, which will be going off to be processed as well. We are one of the forefront runners, very quietly, and really proud of all of that. Our town, our community have been pushing us and driving us to do that. So very pleased with that piece of work.
Thank you, Susan. And Amanda Hoisted, please.
I think it's quite true that everything about the way the community is run is impacted by climate change. So when we talk about things like waste, that needs to be handled in a better way or incorporated into the climate change model. Council, as Susan said, has done a lot towards bringing down our CO2 emissions have been dropping every year. We're doing good work, but we need to do more. The other thing that I have a pet project of mine is to look at the impact of climate change on our fire risk. I'm particularly worried about the amount of threat that we have from the drying off of the coastal areas and how much load there is. And I believe a lot needs to be done to educate the public about safety within the borough in the face of climate change.
Thank you, Amanda. Our next candidate, please, is Fleur Hewitt. Thank you, Fleur.
Thanks. I think that the declaration is fantastic, and I commend the community, particularly the Queenscliff Climate Action Group and Council, for getting it through. I think we need to finalise the climate emergency response plan as a priority, and in particular look for new ideas throughout the borough that we can mitigate and adapt to climate change. The climate emergency response plan should inform everything that council does in the future. Council should also look to educate the community and really take them on the journey. I think as a council, we can lobby the state and federal governments for more action and funding for our new climate change initiatives. We should and we can take action as a council and as a borough for the future to tackle climate change.
Thank you. And our next candidate to speak, please, is Jeffrey Matthews.
I'd just like to say that I like the idea of the council with its climate change policies. I call it ecological change, and we need to encourage small changes within peers and families within the borough. We need to bring the young people into the whole discussion, and we need to accelerate clean and renewable energy and our waste disposal and our consuming of too many goods. So I think it's a great challenge that we've got, but it's also very exciting because it's very important to all of us.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And last on this question is Ross Ebles. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you, Phil. As Councillor Salter and Minty alluded to, yeah, I was the mayor at the time when this was passed to council, that the resolution that Councillor Salter brought to us. So I guess you can say I'm pretty serious about climate change. And as Councillor Minty said, yeah, we were the first council in all of Victoria to go 100% LED lights. Moving forward, it's important that we look through a climate change lens, whatever it is we're doing. A bit like we look at financial implications, we need to look at it as a climate lens as well. And this is part of the new template that the Local Government Act has also put onto us as well. In regard to the response plan, we must engage the whole community in its response to climate change. Obviously, we face an increasing risk from coastal inundation, sea level rise, storm surge and bushfires. We must have an identified pathway, and we must have evidence-based to the strategy. The plan will define the role and responsibility for both the council and the...
Thank you, Ross. Just let me check that everyone's had a chance to answer that. Good, okay. Our next question off the question bank is, I'm wondering what steps you will take to educate the community and visiting public that we are living on Wadawurrung country and that this land has never been ceded. We'll start with Susan Salter, please.
In the current council, we have actually made quite a lot of conversation with the Wadawurrung. We've actually asked the Wadawurrung for all the names for all the geographical features of the Borough of Queenscliff. So you may or may not be aware that Bellarine is in fact the proper name, the Aboriginal name for that piece of land, and the Barwon River is its proper Aboriginal name, and Geelong is its proper Aboriginal name. But they are very busy people and they still haven't got back to us with that piece of work. We see, well, I would see that engaging the Wadawurrung to show us the very important sites around the borough and teaching us about their culture here in the borough is a high priority for us, because we talk about the history of the borough as if it started in 1835, but in fact it has been here for 60.
Thank you, Susan. Our next candidate to speak, please, is Rob Minty.
Thanks very much, Phil. In relation to the Wadawurrung, and we see that the people should be recognised throughout everything we do. In fact, there's a case for all of or many of the names being duplicated in the same way that the Welsh do, particularly around the spots and areas. Although it's for the borough of Queenscliff, it's probably it's virtually the entire area where they have seen and they have had their meetings, and where they've used it as a seasonal destination where they've lived over a particular season. So we're looking at recognising part of this as the entire tourism offering for the area, and that would then go a long way in recognising and educating the people as they come to the borough itself.
Great, thanks, Rob. And next is Ross Ebles, please.
Thank you very much, Phil. Obviously, we've already started discussions with the Wadawurrung people. I think a perfect example was actually with the current hub project, which we have already discussed the landscaping, and also really there's an opportunity for the Wadawurrung people to be involved in the internal workings of the hub, particularly the museum, so they can actually tell the story. We will continue to tell the story through updating of our wayfinding signs in the borough, so obviously including the name places there. Also, council's been looking at how we can improve our entrance signage to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people. We currently have one at the harbour, but I think we need one at Shell Road and the Bellarine Highway as well, to acknowledge and use the place names that the Wadawurrung use for Queenscliff and the Lonsdale townships. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Ross. And Jackie Pearce, please.
Thanks, Phil, and thanks for the question, Joe. Look, I think the first thing we need to do as standard practice is ensure that we have welcome to country ceremonies at all key events within the Borough of Queenscliff. There's no point us white fellas, as they would say, just acknowledging the country that we're sitting on. We actually need our traditional owners being involved and conducting welcome to country ceremonies at the start of all key events. I also acknowledge everything people have said about the need for signage that talks about the relevance of particular areas to our 60,000 plus years of Aboriginal history. I'd like to think that in the new hub, there's absolutely space for interactive exhibitions to occur that start to teach both our permanent residents and our visitors about the rich history of the Wadawurrung people in our area. And I'd like to think it's something that the Queenscliff Reconciliation Committee could also be a key part of. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Amanda Hoysted, please.
Strangely enough, I was reading about the story of William Buckley today and his interactions with the Wadawurrung people. Now, I know that the culture goes back many, many thousands of years before white man came along, but that story is part of the mythology of this area. and should be incorporated into the history of the area as some form of walking trails or I don't know, but the whole interaction with the Wattarong people and their welcoming of William Buckley and their teaching him how to survive is part of the huge mythology of the area and needs to be built upon. And I agree about the signage too. That is a fabulous idea, and I think it's something that absolutely must be done when they get back to you. So.
Thank you, Amanda. And next, Zelda Walters, please.
Consultation with the Wattarong traditional owners is essential to set the priorities of the history and acknowledgement of country on all council information and material, including websites, information for schools and material or displays in the Visitor Information Centre and the museum. So consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Zelda. And Donnie Grigow, please. Donnie.
I'd like to say I'm the only private business in the Borough of Queens that actually flies the Aboriginal flag and show that we're open. I actually like to see the Wattarong people have a permanent display as part of the in the hub, and we should have part of the historic walk that the Visitor Information offers is to have include the history of the Wattarong people. Thank you.
Thanks, Donnie. And Jeffrey Matthews, please.
I'd like to say that we recognise the Wattarong people's history and culture in our future, and that we enhance all that we can in a walk or what I was talking about, a grouping between the harbour and the lighthouse, and including Swan Bay, so that we work with the Wattarong and they're able to give us a great deal of their knowledge that we can impart to visitors and to residents in the town. It's really important, and it's something that as a local, I know that they're around, but I've been to a smoking ceremony, but I don't really know exactly what goes on. And I think it's just a great opportunity to enhance things with the Wattarong.
Thank you, Jeff. And our next candidate to speak, Isabel Tolhurst, please.
Thank you for the question, Joe. You and I have spoken at length about the importance of deep engagement with our traditional owners, the Wattarong people. I have also met with Auntie Corinna Eccles, a traditional owner and elder, who has reiterated the deep significance and importance of the Borough land to First Nations people. So I believe that whatever we do, plaques, acknowledgement, a reinvigoration of the Reconciliation Action Plan, celebrations for NAIDOC Week, which is coming up, must be absolutely in deep, deep consultation with First Nations people and beyond the terms of the Wattarong. The more recognition of our dual histories, the better, but we must walk together towards reconciliation, and it will be a long journey, but one I am very willing and excited about taking.
Isabel, thank you. And Fleur Hewitt, please.
I think it's important that we acknowledge the Wattarong people in everything that council does. At events, we should acknowledge them, and also, as Jackie said, incorporate a welcome to country ceremony. We also should look for new events like for National Reconciliation Week. We need further education programs at our schools. New signage is a great idea, as many have said, particularly around the cultural significance of many of the areas in the borough, and particularly at the entrances into Queenscliff and Point Lonsdale. I believe we need to use more Aboriginal names around the borough, have more Aboriginal flags visible in locations throughout the borough, and also incorporate more Indigenous artwork in council buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Fleur. I'll just let me confirm that everyone's had a chance to answer that question.
That's so I need to have a go at this one, Phil.
Okay, Michael, I knew there was one. Thank you.
Yeah, look, I really, thanks, Joe. I reckon it's a great question. I think we need to do a bit more. And I acknowledge what some of the other candidates are saying, particularly what Izzy said. I think it was great. I think we need to do more than just acknowledge in words. It's 2020. And I think we really need to be pushing ahead with some action. Apart from the sign at the entrance of town from the ferry, honestly, hey, there's not much to say that Wadawurrung people were ever here. I really like what the board riders are doing off their own bat. They'll be acknowledging the Wadawurrung on their new door. Some interpretive signs would be great. Great to invite some Wadawurrung people to explain culture in the new cultural centre. But look, all the middens are lost in the long grass. That's the issue we're facing. How about we give the Wadawurrung people an opportunity to name the cultural centre? Wouldn't the Connewarra Cultural Centre be a great name for the hub?
Michael, thank you. As we said earlier, at about 8:45, we'd roll up the last question and move towards closing out the webinar. There are still some 17 questions in the question bank that we didn't get to, and that's fantastic that there are that many questions. It shows that your voters, the people of Queenscliff and the Point Lonsdale from the Borough of Queenscliff are interested in their future. What we will do is all of those questions that were unanswered will be pulled from the question bank, and the PLCA and the Queenscliff Civic Association will send all of the candidates those questions and ask you to provide a short response. And they will then put those responses on their website. Our approach here is that people bothered to ask a question, they probably deserve an answer. So we will get those out to you tomorrow. We'll download them tonight and distribute them tomorrow. So for all those attendees that asked a question that we didn't get to you, my apologies, but you will get your question to the candidates. On behalf of the combined Bellarine Community Associations who hosted and funded this webinar, on your behalf, thank you for joining, and we hope this was helpful to you all. To the candidates, thank you for your participation tonight and for your personal commitment to our communities and standing for election as a councillor in the Borough of Queenscliff. It is a significant commitment. A link to the recording of this webinar will be available in about 2 days on the websites of the various community associations, and if they have Facebook pages, the link will be placed on their Facebook page. Again, to all the candidates and the attendees, thank you and good night, and please leave the meeting.